All right, hello, it's me, Mike with HPDS. I'll be doing a Genesis 31 study in this video. Genesis 31. Before I do, I'm going to go ahead and do the Lord's Prayer as I normally do. So, Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be thy name. May your kingdom come and may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Please give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our debt, as we forgive those in debt to us. And Lord, lead us not into temptation, but rather deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom of power and glory, Lord, forever and ever. Amen. Okay, so chapter 31, I'll get into that one. I guess what I've been starting off with is I think I seem to like this. Talking about the last chapter, chapter 30. If you remember chapter 30 in the last video, we came across Jacob, and Jacob's been living out there in Haran, living with his wife's family, uh, Laban, who is their father, and he's working real hard for them. And then all of a sudden he tells them, "I want to get out of here. I got to get out of here." So we're already seeing some tension between these people. And so we're going to go ahead and see what happens in chapter 31. And I'll read you the little outline, and we will see that here we find Jacob leaves Laban secretly. So from about verses 1 until 35, it's going to be a pretty long chapter. This is another long chapter. From about 1 to 35, that's what we're seeing that Jacob is he leaves Laban secretly though. And then around verse 36, we're going to see that Jacob's got a complaint against Laban. So he finally tells him, comes out with what's going to happen after some things. And then around verse 43, we're going to see that Jacob and Laban make a covenant, and we'll end the chapter on that note. The two of them making a covenant. So you can already see there's covenants going on a lot of places, and covenants are these agreements between these two people. And that's what we're really coming across a lot of in the Bible. And they're basically promises. They're basically legal kinds of situations. They're like contracts. Covenant is basically like a contract. But yeah, so let me go ahead and get into chapter 31. And let me get it. So, and he heard the words of Laban's sons saying, oh, well, this is American. Let me go to King James Bible. And he heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's hath he gotten all this glory. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. And the Lord said unto Jacob, Return unto the land of thy fathers, and do to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before, but the God of my father hath been with me. And ye know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father hath deceived me, and changed my wages 10 times. But God suffered him not to hurt me. If he said thus, the speckle shall be thy wages, then all the cattle were bare speckled. And if he said thus, the ring straked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring straked. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up mine eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring straked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here I am. And he said, Lift up thine eyes, and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. Then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels. And he carried away all his cattle and all his goods which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting which he had gotten in Paddan Aram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told them not that he fled. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river, and set his face toward the Mount Gilead. And it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob was fled. And he took his brethren with him, and pursued after him 7 days' journeys, and they overtook him in the Mount Gilead. And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night, and said to him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the Mount of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, What hast thou done, that thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives, taken with the sword? Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly, and steal away from me, and didst not tell me, that I might have sent thee away with mirth, and with songs, and with tabor, and with harp? And hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters? Thou hast done foolishly in so doing. It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt, but the God of your father spake unto me yesternight, saying, that take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. And now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet therefore hast thou stolen my gods. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughters from me. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the two maidservants' tent, but he found them not. Then went he out of Leah's tent, and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images, and put them in the camel's furniture, and sat upon them. And Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said to her father, Let it not displease my lord, that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me. And he searched, but found not the images. And Jacob was wroth, and chode with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, What is my trespass? What is my sin, that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of all thy household stuff? Set it before me, set it before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge betwixt us both. This 20 years have I been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. That which was torn of beasts I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it. Of my hand didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was in the day the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from mine eyes. Thus I have been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle. And thou hast changed my wages 10 times. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely thou hadst sent me away now empty. God hath seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. And Laban answered and said unto Jacob, These daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? Now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant, I and thou, and let it be for a witness between me and thee. And Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, Gather stones. And they took stones and made an heap, and they did eat there upon the heap. And Laban called it Yeger Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galeed. And Laban said, This heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Galeed. And Mitzpah, for he said, The Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent from one another. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives beside my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt me and thee. And Laban said to Jacob, Behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and that thou shalt not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. The God of Abraham, and the God of Nahor, and the God of their father, judge betwixt us. And Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat bread. And they did eat bread, and tarried all night in the mount. And early in the morning Laban rose up, and kissed his sons and daughters, and blessed them. And Laban departed, and returned unto his place. All right, so that was Genesis 31 in its entirety. It was like I said, it's a pretty long one. There's also some things going on here that he gets. They make a covenant between these two guys, Laban and Jacob, and we also see something else that's really like I said. I've been talking just like in the other previous videos. I've said these guys are nothing like Jesus Christ. So we're really seeing these chosen people, and these chosen people are nothing like Jesus Christ, and we're gonna see how they changed and how they changed because of Jesus Christ in time, which becomes the promise that we know of today. But here we see something once again very very vile and wicked that these guys are sounding like they're the heroes of the story, I guess if you want to say they're the main focus points of the story, Jacob over here. And they're supposed to be, like I said, the heroes. They're the good guys. But we see something that's very vile and wicked, even though this chapter doesn't necessarily take the time to explain how vile and wicked it is. But I've been talking about how they've been taking women this whole time, and they've been killing the men and so forth like that. But here's something that's very vile and very wicked, and it's the idolatry. There's a little god. I mean, Laban comes after them because a little statue gets stolen, a little god, a little idol. And so you got some idol worship going on in these people over out in Haran. So I made mention in I think the last video where I said things like this family is definitely absorbing the culture around them, and they were supposed to be a lot better than this, but here they are, multiple wives. They're doing that kind of stuff, and now here's a thing where one of the wives already, Rachel, the favorite wife over here, she's stealing her father's idols. So meaning she was probably a little idol worshiper herself. She was, praying to false gods, something that God, detests. So God detests this. But here it was with this with Jacob's wife, and you will see that she pays a very serious price because Jacob himself said, if anybody right here it is on verse 30, 31, or 32. He says, 33, he says that, whoever you find them with, then let that person die. And they don't find them, but ultimately it is known, and we read that it was Rachel that had stolen them. And we will read what happens to her in the next few chapters. But let me go ahead and get into it. I'll go into it and I'll start it line by line. This is a pretty long chapter, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about. So let's see. So here comes Jacob. Here's the story. It's starting off while there's already some issues going on. He's already been there at least 14 years that we read of, and then we did read that he was gonna keep feeding the flock, right, for him, and he was doing all that extra work, so he made sure that his own flock, that his flock was mating, that they were that they were having an easy time when it came time for them to have children and have babies, that they weren't running around out, and like that was kind of the deal. He was making it to where it was easy for them to mate, and then when they were having their children, when they were giving birth, he made it easy for them to go into a spot and have an easy birth and not get lost and take care of the babies, instead of course doing it all out in the wild, which is what was probably going on with Laban's group of flock, because he wasn't doing any extra work. They were basically relying on Jacob to do everything. Jacob was making it easy for them, and so but then we see that they're getting envious of him, because Jacob has basically told them, after those 14 years, he says, I've worked so much for you guys, like, let me go home to my family. But they don't want him to leave, and so then they say, well, what should give us your price and just stay with us, any price. They'll pay him. They paid him. In chapter 30, they were paying him, and he took all of those, a big portion of the flock. And then at the end of chapter 30, we remember reading about this whole little setup that he was doing, where he was bringing these gutters and he was putting them in the water trough. So it's kind of like trapping them in there. So it made it easy for the the males to come mate with the females. And then he put, kind of like I said, where he made this other one. So when they were having the babies, when they were conceiving, they'd go out there and they'd give birth. I mean, they'd give birth out there, and it was like he was basically making sure that they were safe. He was giving them making it easy for them to mate, and make it easy for them to be protected when they were having the babies, when they were giving birth. Whereas Laban and his family, who knows? They probably weren't doing much work. They were just, watching going out and keeping them, letting them do their own thing, not watching, not paying attention. And they had become so accustomed to Jacob doing all the work for them. And after those 14 years, that's what he says, he stopped caring. He stopped paying attention to theirs. And all he did was fed them and watered them. But he didn't, whenever he was doing his thing with his cattle, he would make sure that his cattle had it nice and easy with their mating and giving birth, and then he'd take it all apart and take it with him wherever he would go. So he was doing all this extra work, but he wasn't doing it for their flocks anymore. He was just doing it for his own flock, and all he was doing was feeding their flock. And their flock wasn't really growing as prosperous, because of course uh, Jacob was putting in extra work on his flock. But so anyway, so that we see here at the very beginning of Genesis 31, the sons of Laban's, so basically Jacob's brothers-in-laws, Rachel and Leah's brothers over here, were saying that Jacob had taken away all that was our father's, and all that which was our father's, now he's got in glory. So now they're looking and they're saying, well, now that, what happened here? Like, Jacob's got a whole bunch of stuff and we don't have that much stuff anymore. So what's going on here? And so that's how Jacob can start seeing, like, this family, these guys don't like me anymore. My father-in-law, my brother-in-law, they're not, they just don't like me anymore. Apparently I stopped doing work for them, and I just been feeding their sheep, and and for some reason they don't like that. Apparently I got a bunch of stuff now because I've been taking care of my sheep. I've been taking care of my flock, and they haven't really been taking care of their flock. So that's what he's realizing. He sees that, and so now, Lord, here comes God. The Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. So here we have the Lord again. He's making a statement. He's not necessarily making himself visible. It's something that you have to understand, that it's probably Jacob is hearing it said. So he's hearing it somehow. God is speaking to him, and Jacob recognizes he might be out there one day, and all of a sudden, here he hears the Lord just speak, it's plain as day, coming from somewhere, but he doesn't know, and it's a voice coming from nowhere, and so he recognizes that that's something supernatural that only God is capable of doing. And so the Lord is coming on to Jacob. He's telling him, he's saying, return unto the land of your fathers and your kindred, and I will be with you. And so he's telling him, just like how he's out there in Haran, and just like Abraham was called by the Lord into the land of Canaan. So this is very similar to what the Lord had done to Abraham. He's out there in Haran, and he calls on to Jacob, and Jacob hears his voice, and he tells him, come back to the land of your fathers and your kindred. So now you see that he's an immigrant out in Haran. You see, so whereas Abraham was a foreigner living amongst the land of Canaan, we see Jacob is now basically a foreigner living out in Haran, where Abraham had heard the call and come from. So we see this kind of how it's intertwining back and forth, which, like I said, there's some repetition, and then there's intertwining, and we see where God is definitely showing something, and it looks like some sort of I don't know, like two segments, and they're intertwining like shoelaces, or like a strand of some sort, where they're wrapping around like that. And so here he is. He's basically an immigrant. He's out in Haran, and here's the Lord basically telling him, look, he's admitting it. Look, now you're a foreigner out where where your great grandfather came from, or your grandfather, so forth. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock. So of course, Jacob calls them. He says, it's time to get out of here. And he calls his wives. It's time to get out of here. He says, I've seen how your father, he doesn't like me like he used to. Now he's real angry towards me lately. He's real mean to me lately. But he says, but the God of my father had been with me. So my God has been with me. So I don't know why he's so upset, why his God isn't helping him. And so Abraham recognizes that Laban is following a different God over here. There's a different God. And he says, that with all my power, I've worked for your dad as hard as I can. I've done everything I could for your father, is what he tells him. But your father, he's, that he's changed my wages 10 times. But God suffered him not to hurt me. So you see that, he changed. Your dad has always been like this with me. He kept messing with me. He kept taking advantage of me. He kept changing my wages. He kept, every time my stuff got big, when my flock got big and was blessed by God, and I knew what I was doing because God was with me, and I was doing all this work. That's what he's telling him. He's bringing up all this stuff. He's telling her that. Nonetheless, your dad was always abusing me, always changing my wages, always taking the bigger portions. Even though I was responsible for those bigger, God was with me. His God was not with him, is what's being distinguished here. And he said, so that's why he's making mention that how they were keeping they're speckled or ring straked, and so that's what was going on here. They were kind of separating them, and obviously, that's what he was saying in the last chapters. He was taking his, whenever he said the ring straked were going to be his, he'd take the ring straked and he'd make sure that they made it properly, and that's what he was doing. He was making sure that they were taking care of their mating and their offspring, but he didn't really care about the speckle. That's what he was, I didn't do that because those are your flocks, and I didn't want you to think that I was stealing your flocks. But then he would see the ring straked and he would take them. And now he'd tell you, now your speckled are yours. Well, now all these speckled, there's not that many speckled. So he was always just increasing his own by switching off with Jacob stuff. And so, thus God had taken, so that's what he's saying. So that's why God took away the cattle of your father and gave them to me, because your dad's been mistreating me. He's been mistreating me. That's what he's convincing his wives, and they're clearly gonna see and see it, and they do see it, and they do understand. And so here he is. He's talking about he's still talking about his pay and how he's taking care of the cattle, and that's just what he's saying. And look, uh, it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived that I lifted up mine eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring-shaped, speckled, and grizzled. So here, oh look, so he's talking about a dream here. He gave them to me, like you saw that, and then so he's I even remember I had a dream that when all these cattle were conceived, look, I had a dream, and behold, the rams which leapt upon the cattle were ring straight, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here I am. So when he's getting time to, when he was learning about it, that's what he was saying. He got a dream, and this dream was about these cattle. And the angel of God told him, he said, Lift up thine eyes and see the rams which all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring straight, speckled, and grizzled. For I've seen all the Laban that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest the vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered unto him, Is there yet any portion of our inheritance for us in our father's house? So let me stop right there. These last few were this dream that Jacob is telling about a dream in which God came to him, an angel of God came to him, and he was telling him, "Look, all these, you got all these cattle. Take these cattle. You're having this. He's having this dream, saying, basically, they're all just about the time that it's a certain time of the year, and that time is they're having the children, the babies. The cattle are giving birth. So whenever that time is, they're about to give birth, and the God is saying, "Look, you're gonna get all this big. You're gonna get a big portion here with all these cattle. A lot of these cattle are gonna have. You're gonna better get a big portion. There's gonna be a lot of births. There's gonna be a lot of new cattle coming up here, and so he's telling them, and this dream was, now I'm gonna take him. Go ahead and take him, is what he's saying. Take him, and he's reaffirming that I'm the God of Bethel. So he's reaffirming the God in this dream is reaffirming that he's that same God that was with them back there in Bethel when Jacob saw that ladder, when he had that dream about the ladder over there. So here's another dream, and God is making sure that he realizes I'm the same God. You know this, right? There's not other God. It's me. It's the same God. It's the same God that spoke with Abraham. I'm the same God that spoke with your father Isaac, and so forth. And so he's really reaffirming that, and this is, like I said, still pointing to that where we're going to come up later with this idol worship that was going on in Laban's household. Laban was worshiping a different God than this God that is giving the dream to Jacob. And God is telling Jacob and making sure that Jacob understands and realizes, I'm the God, not this little thing that's about to come up. I'm the God. I'm your God. So that's what's going on here. That's what that dream is all about. And he was basically saying, you're gonna have a big herd coming up, and go ahead and take off, and I'm taking them from Laban, and I'm giving them to you, and I'm the same God, and don't forget that, and that's what he was saying. So Rachel and Leah are agreeing, and they're saying, is there yet any portion? Is there anything left? I guess, it's true. Our Father doesn't have anything left for us. And doesn't he kind of think of us as strangers? He sold us, so this is that whole concept. And he hath quite devoured also our money. So she's realizing, look, he's kind of, this is that whole women's, how they feel. And they're like, yeah, like he just sold us when you think about it. They realize, yeah, he just sold us to you, remember? I mean, sure, you're a husband and everything, but yeah, he really did sell us to you. I mean, so we're sold, so it's not like we belong to him or anything. We belong to you now, is what they're saying. And also, the way he treated you is the same way he treated us, because that was our stuff, is what they realized. All that stuff, because you're our husband, that was our stuff. And he did do that to us. You're right. He just kept switching the wages on us. So for all the riches which God had taken, so that is ours and our children's now then. So they're saying, yeah, you're right. Everything you're saying is right. So these two women agree with him, and they're telling him, whatever God tells you to do, let's do it. Let's do it. They're in agreement. Let's do whatever you want to do, Jacob. And so he gets up, rose up, sets his sons on wives upon camels. So he gets them ready for travel, and they carried away all his cattle and the cattle of his getting. And so they get it, and they for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. So they pack up and they're on their way home, back to Canaan. And so Laban went to shear his sheep. And here we see right here, this is the vile thing. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him that he had fled. So so Rachel goes and steals the images that were her father's. These are they're going to be idols from idol worship. So they're over here doing some idol worship. So he's being idol. He's being an idol worshiper. So and then at the same time, that's when they leave. So Rachel steals them because she knows they're leaving. So that means Rachel herself was probably, praying to these idols also. She wasn't praying to the God of Abraham all the time, or maybe she was, like I said, she didn't understand. She was praying to the image, and she was serving the image, and she was also serving the saying that she served God of Jacob over here, but she was clearly thinking that they were two separate gods, and that one God did this, and maybe one God did that. And so she's, great, she's going to be really mistaken. And so Jacob stole away unawares to Laban. So now they're taking off, but they don't tell Laban. So he fled. He knows he's gonna probably things are gonna get kind of crazy. He knows it's not gonna be good, but he's got the ability. He got every right to just leave. And now he's just leaving, and he goes to the Mount Gilead. And I don't really know what this Mount Gilead is. I have to clearly um, grab some pictures over here. Maybe we can find this Gilead map, but I don't really know if I can find Gilead. So they're basically in Padon Haram, but they're heading towards Gilead. So I guess he's heading all the way over here. So he's probably making his way out here, and he probably chases after him and catches him somewhere out here. Maybe halfway through, or is what it seems like. I also don't know. Look, it's 100 miles, so this would roughly be one, maybe two, maybe 400 miles. So it's a pretty long distance, but it's only 7 days that he runs after him. So it's not like it's too far that they made, but he's definitely going to this area. So he's trying to make it home. He's calling it over here. Uh, that's what we know. So it seems like a long distance for them, but I also, like I said, I don't really know how far around these people were walking. And maybe they were coming out all the way over here. Maybe they're just staying on this side. I really don't know how far they could have traveled in 20 years, how far they'd be going. Or if maybe, like I said, he called this whole area, all of this Gilead. And he could have just done that, where I'm going to Gilead. Well, that's the way I'm heading. And so this whole area, as far as these guys know, is Gilead. So as far as they know, that's what that's called. But that's how it was with these people. Because keep in mind, Jacob had never been out here when he first showed up, so that's why he was real concerned. Like he thought it was a miracle when he found these people, and he was even saying, "Wow, if I make it over there and I make it back home to my father's land," that's what Jacob had said. He goes, "This God, I will definitely pay him a tenth of everything. This God will be my everlasting God. This will be my God." And so he's following that same God because he too, apparently, they don't realize that there's only one God. For some reason, they seem to think that there's the possibility of many gods. They think that many people have this power, that God has and that God is displaying to Abraham and Abraham's family line. So that's what we're seeing here. He's gonna make it back, and that's where he knows this town is or this place is. He's calling it Gilead, and he goes. And so they chase him after him for 7 days, and they took him to in the Mount Gilead. So, like I said, I don't really know where this Mount Gilead is. This is the only one I see, but that seems like a long distance. But who knows? I mean, they could have been way out somewhere like that. And let's see, he goes, and Laban said to Jacob, "Why have you done this? You carried away my daughters as captives." So they're really getting into it finally. It's really coming to, just like how things were getting crazy back with Isaac and Abraham with Abimelech. Here we've got Laban over here. Laban isn't necessarily a king, but he's butting heads with Jacob over here. And he's basically saying, why did you basically plundered us? You just stole away all my stuff and all my children and all my daughters and everything, right? And he goes, why did you flee away secretly and steal from me and not tell me? If you'd have told me, I would have let you go with songs and with joy and celebration, right? And now look at me, I can't even kiss my daughters and sons goodbye. Now you did something bad. And he goes, I could hurt you. But the God of your father spake unto me yesternight. And so that's what he's saying. He had a dream saying, take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. See, so that's what he's saying. Like now Laban is realizing, see, he's calling, but the God of your father. So he's saying that he realizes, hey, your God came to me. The God of your father came to me and told me not to speak either good or bad to you. So, I was like, it was clearly convincing enough to Laban over here that he was like, I know that was your God, not mine. That was your God, the God of your father. And that guy was pretty scary. So he told me not to speak either good or bad to you. So I'm not gonna do anything. And he goes, but when he goes, and now thou wouldest needs be gone, and now though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longest after my father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my goods? So this is kind of a complicated one for me. Let me see what it's saying. He's saying now look at you. If you would have told me that you're leaving, we could have celebrated, and you could have gone, and I would, nothing would have been a problem, but now he's saying, but now, right now, you would have already been gone. You would have been on your way. Because if you'd have just told me, but because you didn't tell me, I'm out here chasing after you, and because thou sorest longest after thy father's house, yeah, wherefore hast thou stolen my goods? I mean, you're the one. Now I'm over here chasing. You're the one. You're going home. Apparently, but you've also stolen my gods. So he's really concerned about, like, he's trying to kind of still place the blame here on on Jacob over here, and he's telling him, you should have just told me that you were gonna leave, and then we would have celebrated and had a good time, and then now you would have already been on your way, and you would have been getting closer. You're over here, you want to get to your father's house so quickly, but now I gotta hold you up because y'all stole from me, my gods. And so of course Jacob answers. So he tells him, because I was afraid. He's like, first off, I was afraid if I told you you were gonna take my daughters, your daughters from me by force. You would take my wives away from me. So once again, here we are, afraid of men taking away wives. Even as far as the father, just, I'm gonna take these kids, your wives away from you. So everybody just takes the people by force. With whomsoever that, and so he tells them. So first off, I was afraid you're going to take your daughters away from me, my wives. And he goes, and second of all, if you find those gods among me, I didn't steal them. You go, let him not live. Anyone who stole them, let them die. That's how. If this is how serious it is, no one would have taken in my household. No one should have taken them. They should die for believing in these false idols instead of my God. right? Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me. So before y'all go looking through my stuff, go ahead and know that. If you find them, kill them and take it to you, for Jacob. But he didn't know that Rachel had stolen them. So he says it. He makes a pretty bold statement. He says, look, go ahead, look through my stuff. If you find it, whoever you find it with, go ahead and kill them. They deserve it. So he makes a really bold statement right there. And he didn't know that Rachel, especially not knowing that Rachel had stolen them. And this is something, like I said, this is a serious offense. This is idolatry. Rachel, for some reason, wasn't trusting in Jacob, in the God of Jacob. She was also trusting in this little statue for whatever reason. And so Jacob goes in, so Laban goes throughout the tents and he doesn't find him. He goes into Rachel's, and Rachel had taken him, but she put him in the camel bag or whatever. And she sat on him, and then basically she told him she was on her monthly. It's the time of that month for me. And so that's why she says, I can't get up because it's that time of the month. And so, of course, she's all right, fine. No big deal. And so he's looking around and he's, I guess he can't find him, you know? So that's right here. For custom of women is upon me, and he searched and not. So he goes throughout the place, even searches Rachel's place, but doesn't find him. And after, of course, he doesn't find anything, here comes Jacob. Jacob was wroth. He was mad, and he chode with Laban. So he really, gave it to Laban. He really started talking harshly to him, and he said, what did I do wrong? What's my trespass? What is my sin? That you've come chasing after me like a criminal, basically. You come after me, you chased after me. What did I do? And and he goes, you've searched all my stuff, and and you don't see anything. And he goes, put all my stuff out here so everybody could, grab everything you think was mine, and that they may judge betwixt us both. So he's saying, go ahead, everything. What did you find? And he really gets into it some more. He goes, I've been with you for 20 years. Thy ewes and thy she goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. So he's telling him, look, I did all of this work for you. I didn't, and any times the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. I didn't eat your stuff. I didn't, take from your goats. I took care of them, but I didn't eat them. I didn't eat of them. And anything that was eaten by the animals, didn't I bore the loss of it, and my hand didst thou require eat. So you were always, every time the animals got eaten by wolves or whatever, I was the one that had to pay for it. Remember, he's telling them that was me. I had to pay it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. So if it was any one of them, you didn't cut the losses with me at all. It was my loss, and everything was yours, is what he was telling him. And he goes, so I was in the day, so thus I was in the day the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and the sleep departed from mine eyes. He's just telling him, I worked all day, all night, winter and summer, and even when I was sleepy. Look at how I did. I worked so hard for you. And I served, and I served 14 for your daughters. I paid you, and I paid 6 years of my life for the cattle. I paid you 20 years of my life, and you kept changing my wages. Remember that. You kept changing them. Every other year you changed them. And except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely thou hast sent me away now empty. God hath seen mine affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. So this is another big, powerful, bold statement on behalf of God. So he's affirming that, look, my God was with me, not your God. Your God wasn't with me. Your God wasn't even with you. And God had seen my affliction. So he's saying, God, my God is the real God. My God is more powerful than your God. And my God saw how you have been treating me, and if it wasn't for him, you would have sent me away empty-handed. That's what he's saying. If it wasn't for God taking care of me, you would have sent me away empty-handed. And he's saying, but he saw how you treated me and how hard I worked, and he rebuked you last night. So that's what he's saying. So now you had a dream like I've had these dreams. I've seen him in the dreams, is what he's saying. Now he's come to you, and he's told you last night that he's with me, telling that he's with me, telling you that you treated me wrong. And so you get Laban answering, and he gets kind of upset. Real, these daughters are my daughter, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? So he's saying, what are you talking about? This isn't fair. Everything you have, these are my daughters, these are my children, everything, these are my cattle. How am I gonna, I'm not gonna hurt any of everybody here again. So it comes down to another thing about this safety issue. He's like, I don't know what you're talking. I'm not gonna hurt you guys. He's After he's been rebuked and he sees that Jacob is in the right. He's reaffirming, look, I'm not gonna hurt you. So this is kind of the same concept that we saw also with Abimelech. Like he's coming on to like, look, let's not hurt each other. Let's don't hurt each other. We're getting mad, but let's not hurt each other. So this is like peace. So this is that's why Melchizedek is responsible for these covenants, because he's the king of peace, and he's the king of righteousness. So he's making sure everything gets established and followed, and he makes sure that it's peaceful along the way. So now, therefore, come thou, let us make a covenant. So here they are. All right, let's not hurt each other. We're getting mad, but let's make a covenant. And so they take some stone. Jacob takes some stone from, and he makes up a pillar just like he's done in the past, just like Abraham's done in the past, and so forth. And Jacob said unto his brother, gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap. And so they make a heap. And so that's why they call it. So you see that people are calling these different names. Laban calls it Yeger Sarahuta or something, Sahudata, but Jacob called it Galeed. And so Galeed, like I said, this is Gilead, that's not quite Galeed, so Galeed probably is somewhere up here somewhere. It's got to be up here somewhere on the way back. But anyway, so he calls it Galeed, and Laban said, this heap is a witness between me, and so he calls it Galeed, and Mitzpah, for he said, the Lord watch between me and thee. So he's got some certain names for it. For he said, the Lord, because, and the Lord watched between me and thee when we were absent from one another, from one from another. So he's saying, he's calling it because from you, first off, and then also because the Lord was watching me. He was watching between us, even when we're absent from one another. So he's really saying that God is here and God is watching both of us. And he's telling that to Laban over there. And so here comes, this is Laban saying that, right? He's so blah blah. Let's see. For he said the Lord. So this is Laban saying, all right, God is watching us even when we're absent from another. So this is Laban saying that, and he goes also. So Laban's real upset too. He tells him, if you hurt my daughters, if you afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives besides my daughters, that's what he says. Or if you take any other wives besides my daughters, he says, no man is with us. So, see, God is witness between me and thee. So he's saying, don't hurt my daughters, and don't take any more wives other than my daughters. And he's basically saying, this is how I know that your God is real. This is kind of an interesting, like I said, this is a confusing one. So I'm gonna kind of see another one of this. I'm gonna go back to this NLT and see what this one reads, and see what I can gather from these two, and see what am I missing here? What have other people? What's going on here, Lord? Let me find out. So this is 3150, verse 3150, and I know I was reading it earlier, and it kind of did that number on me too, where I didn't understand what he was saying. Let's see. If you mistreat my daughters, this is 3150 in the NLT. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you marry other wives, God will see it, even if no one else does. He is a witness to this covenant between us. So so he's really basically including. So this is Laban doing this. Laban is including it. So even though Laban was worshiping this idol that Rachel stole, he was making sure that he was including Jacob's God, because this God was a God that was saying, all right, your God if your God is so powerful over here, that's what he was saying, that he's gonna watch. He's gonna watch. He's gonna know. So don't take any other wives and don't hurt my daughters. Let me see. What else was there? 49. Let me see. But it was also called. So So it's kind of a strange thing, but it has to do a lot, like I said, where he's testing God over here. He's basically saying, your God's so powerful that clearly your God will know, uh, if you do something like that, even though no man is with us, even though nobody sees us or nobody, even though no one tells me, God will see it apparently. And so he's telling them, he's including, so this is another man kind of using this against Jacob. Is really what he's kind of doing. He's kind of saying, fine, because he was over here, like I said, he was apparently he was an idolater, so he probably believed in many gods. He could have thought of this God, that God, and this God. And so really now he's after this happened, he's kind of being put to shame. God is, reprimanding him, rebuking him for having many gods. And and so of course when he's making this covenant with Abraham, instead of invoking any of his gods, he's saying, no, you know what? We're going to do it on your God, Jacob, since this is so important to you, since this is, so forth. It's this your God, our God, so he's really just kind of making it out to be like a single God over here, like a, another God, but he's using it because Jacob is really devout to this God. And so Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, behold this pillar. So they're putting up they're talking about their pillar, just like, other covenants we've read through in Genesis. They got the pillar, the heap acts as a witness. So this is interesting because we do come across it much later on about what, there's going to be some witnesses, and I think they're earth and the water and the blood. Earth, water, and blood are going to be like three witnesses for God, something along those lines. Earth, water, and blood. And so this here you can see this is the earth is acting as a witness for these covenants. So that's why we know that just as Noah's covenant or Noah's curse was kept, so as these covenants are by God. So the curses and the blessings are fulfilled by the Lord. He's fulfilling them. But more than that, he's also keeping these covenants, and he's making sure that these covenants stay. These covenants are staying in place and staying are abiding with, are being abided by. And that's why we even saw it with Abimelech getting his crazy dreams, his scary dreams. God was coming to him in dreams too. So God is definitely coming upon these people that Abraham's line is making covenants with. Like they definitely know his God, even though Abraham and here Jacob doesn't know anything about your God. I don't know nothing about your God, Laban, but your God, but my God, you definitely know a little something about, because he came to you too. And so that's what's going on here, kind of what's going on, and these pillars serve as witnesses to these covenants for God, because they bear witness for God. They're his rocks. He made them, and so forth. So look, the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. So here he is, and he's swearing by the fear of his father Isaac. So this is another kind of, let's see what NLT reads, verse 53. I call on the God of our ancestors, the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of my grandfather Nahor, to serve as a judge between us. So Jacob took an oath before the fearsome God of his father Isaac to respect the boundary line. So basically, I guess what they're trying to say is that they're agreeing that the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor were basically the same God. So even though, there's a bunch of different gods, this is the God that they're calling on, calling on this God, or they're making sure that they know. And of course, there's only one God, but these guys didn't know. So what they're doing is they're really like, think of it like, I would, call it like an experiment where they're saying, all right, we're going to put it on this God to keep this covenant valid and in place and followed. And this God is so powerful that he's gonna make it happen. And so there, for future generations, because other covenants with other gods, other places, they just won't last. Because they're not putting a real God to the test. They're not making covenants between a real God, and that real God isn't going to judge between them and isn't going to act like a legal executor and a judge to a contract like this God does. This God does. The God of Abraham, this particular God of Nahor, the God of their fathers. So that's what he's saying. This God will judge between us. And so Jacob went ahead and he swore by the fear of his father Isaac. So he said, basically, Jacob was probably even telling him, I won't swear on any other God that you bring across to me. The only God I'll swear upon is this God. And so Nahor was like, all right, that's the God we're making this covenant in front of. Because for whatever reason, these other gods aren't good enough to you. You're a real slave to this one God, aren't you? Is what he's kind of saying here. And so they offered the sacrifice upon the mount, and they called his brethren. They ate bread, and they tarried all night in the mount. They had a good time, they partied, they celebrated. And then early in the morning, Laban rose up, kissed his sons and daughters, and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned to his place. Whew, that's a long chapter. See how that's another one of those long chapters. But so what happened here? Let's go ahead and realize what happened was, once again, Jacob decides it's time to go. It's been 20 years. I got to go home. God told me to go home. Things are getting kind of bad. You guys are getting real angry with me. You guys aren't as nice to me as you used to be, and so forth. And he takes off. There's a brief notice of an idol that goes stolen, and though there's not too much understanding what's going on here, it really is something that you have to learn and come to the understanding that God hates idolatry. He hates it. He's a real jealous God. There's no reason that you should be praying to other gods. This God has proved himself to us. It's just historical fact. He is historically the one and only God that is out there. He's put all other gods to shame. This is something that is true. It's just a fact. It's just the truth. This God brought Jesus Christ back to life, and his country in today's world is now a big, major, just like it said it would be in the Bible. Israel is a country again. It's established. It's gonna be a stumbling block for a lot of these nations, and a lot of these nations are gonna, they don't realize it, but it's all revolving around Israel and Israel's God, basically. So, but he's proved himself, and in this case, he's starting to prove himself, and he's showing how he proves himself through these covenants. He definitely is proving himself through the covenants, and Laban is definitely kind of learning a little thing about Jacob and how serious he is about this one God. Whereas Rachel, we'll see that she wasn't also very serious, that for some reason she was participating in this idol worship alongside her father. But we'll see what happens to her because of it in the future, especially when you realize the grave statement that Jacob made, saying, whoever you find it upon, go ahead and kill them. And so we're gonna see just what happens to Rachel. It's exactly what it sounds like. She's gonna pay a very dear price for being an idolater among Jacob's household. So I'll go ahead and end this video here. To whoever may be watching, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and God bless you. And I pray we all bless Jesus Christ, and may Jesus Christ bless all of us. Amen.